started of medical cannabis demystified, and in that strand I've been going condition by condition as to, you know, how people are benefiting from the use of cannabis to ease their symptoms. Nobody's claiming, really ever claiming, that it's a cure for things, but what it is, like for myself, it's absolutely beneficial to my well-being and to how I can, it enables me to live my life, enables me to sleep easy at nighttime. Huge thing. Everybody needs to sleep. And so, you know, so today we've done epilepsy in kids, we've done epilepsy in adults, last time with Martin Condon. So this time, we're entering a world of which a lot of friends, I have several friends that suffer from this, and I know lots of people, 1 in 20, they say, in the world, that's the global figures, are suffering from fibromyalgia. So I have a guy here tonight, and you'll notice that he's yet again another guy who's disguised, because that again is the reason for this, the title of these talks, which is Canna We Talk now. And apparently we can't. And so tonight we're going to learn a little bit about the experience of fibromyalgia and how it is for an Irish patient. And indeed, a man who was actively working as a chef in the hospitality, which, and everybody knows that chef is a kind of stressful job. So don't know if that's involved. So let's hear about it. Hi, Bob West. Welcome to, it's not the show, you know, but welcome to my chats.
Hello, Stephen, and thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you, man. Disguised?
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, I'd love to be able to show my face, but for the moment, we can't, because there's various legal issues at play. Yeah, so I'll probably start with describe a little bit about fibromyalgia. So illness to pin down for a lot of doctors, because it's an illness of exclusion. There's no test that you can run for fibromyalgia. It's more, you run a lot of tests and then find out what it's not first. So that's kind of why it can be difficult to pin down for a lot of people. But some of the symptoms that generally people have are tender areas, muscle pain, pain with the connective tissues, migraines, IBS, bladder issues. So there's a long series of issues, but they're generally all to do with the nervous system.
All debilitating.
All debilitating, yeah.
And just a thing that I was looking before we came on the call. I mean, is it recognized in Ireland as a disability yet, officially?
It's like a sub-disability category. It's not officially a full disability, but they recognize it as a chronic long-term illness kind of thing. So yeah, it's an in-between kind of space. I think that depending on how severe you are, you can get it recognized as a disability, but it's more person by person case. So some people are.
Tell me how it manifested for you in the first place. I mean, was it triggered? I believe it can be triggered.
It can be triggered, but for me, it was a slow decline more so.
Right.
So I slowly started to get worse and worse and worse. And I think part of that might have been from the stress of working in hospitality. But also it could be from other personal stress as well. But yeah, I have a feeling that it was a slow decline, because it wasn't all my symptoms came on at once. It was, I've had issues for years with my joints and my ligaments and stuff like that. And even as a kid, I would have, like, if I fell over and sprained an ankle, I'd be out for 6 weeks rather than 3 days for some people. So I have always had kind of issues. So that's why I think it has been there longer, and I just started to notice it more as I came into my late 20s.
I hear you.
Yeah.
The thing is that it starts to make, it's not that so far removed from my own experience. I have PPMS, which is primary progressive MS, and the nature of that is you're going downhill very, very slowly. You're not, it's not, the 85% of people with MS are what they call relapsing remitting, which means that they get dramatic kind of flare-ups, and you know, you literally can go blind crossing the road, that type of thing. But so fibromyalgia is, so mine PPMS is really, really slow. Don't know what's going on with you. It all starts to make sense later. or afterwards you kind of go, okay, that's what that was. So it sounds like a similar thing.
That was very similar for me as well. It's like once I actually got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, that's why I had that. Oh, that's why you start to realize a lot of the things more once you
Yeah.
actually know what the diagnosis is. And you can look into it a lot yourself. But for myself, it took me about 2 years of trying to actually get a diagnosis.
Wow.
And that was by going private, because even to get a colonoscopy was taking 6 months in the public system. So
Shocking.
it was very slow process with lots of tests and quite expensive as well. All in all, it probably cost me around €2,000 just to get a diagnosis.
Incredible. And the thing about it is like with many of these illnesses, we can put them together, these kind of neurological conditions, that once you're diagnosed, you become uninsurable. And nobody wants to know you, like, no, you're not going to rock up to, what are the VHI and get a policy easy, or all the other stuff that goes with that. You're
Yeah.
kind of in
On
an
that, 6 days after I actually got the diagnosis, my insurance company changed my policy.
How about that?
6 days. So yeah, and I've had various issues with them since then, but trying to get them to cover anything is almost impossible. Even physiotherapy, which they will cover on every policy for normal people. But if they think you need it more, no, you can't have it now.
You're too much of a liability.
Yeah.
It's shocking because it puts us, I'm in the same boat, dude, and it puts us in this kind of space where we now have to rely on the state that we never really saw it to happen for our lives. I mean, you were a working chef. I'm a working promoter. We all had lives until this. It's you can call it the luck of the draw, but it's not really. It's like the thing is that there has to be. That's where the state is supposed to come in and help us out, I think.
And that's where there's a lot of failures in the state as well, and especially for like people on the medical card like myself. They'll give you any prescription you want, no matter how strong the pharmaceuticals is, and it will cost you minimal amounts of money. So an example, one of the only pharmaceuticals I take currently is Valium or diazepam for restless leg syndrome, because when you're trying to get to sleep and your legs are moving constantly, it's kind of difficult to get to sleep, to say the least. But the 20 tablets cost $150 off the medical card system. So if it's something stronger like a gabapentin or an amitriptyline, still less than €10 for a month's prescription. So even if you are trying to treat yourself with cannabis, to try and do it versus the price wise, it's impossible to get that cheap. So you have to rely on something else some of the time, because if I can't provide myself with my medication, then I have to rely on other things as well.
So let's get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one other thing I want to get to before we start talking cannabis. You had there was a drug at the HSC that my friends with FM were telling me that was working for them quite well, and then the HSC, there was a bit of going to fund it, didn't fund it, nearly funded it. Do you know what? Can you enlighten me on that?
It could be what's it, DMX or M or something like that. There's a neuropathic chemical or a neurotropic chemical that's people are trying in America to get recognized, but it's still not recognized there as well. I can't remember the exact name of it off the top of my head.
Sorry, and I've dropped it on you.
No, I think it's like DMX or something like that. But it's a neurotropic chemical. I think I know the one you're talking about. I just can't remember the exact acronym off the top of my head.
Anyway, but the point was that they withdrew funding. People were finding it quite successful for them, and then with funding for it was withdrawn, and that's a feature of some of these drugs. So tell me about cannabis. So cannabis, it's up there with when we talk about the effectiveness and the studies that are constantly done, cannabis and MS, cannabis and whatever. Fibromyalgia is always up there. And so you found your way to that cannabis works for you. So tell me about that. Tell me how the journey of it, how you found it.
Well, I probably started smoking cannabis when I was about 2021, around there. even before I had a diagnosis,
Right.
and had always found it as something that would help me get to sleep, especially if you're working in hospitality, if you're coming home at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the
End of the
morning.
night.
Yeah, you don't really want to go drinking at that time, but that's what a lot of people do in that position. But I wasn't one of them, so I'd smoke a joint and then help me get to sleep.
I think it's a
And
massive amount of the people using cannabis in Ireland are people at the end of their shift, at the end of their night, at the end of their week.
yeah,
They're having a joint to unwind. I mean, that's part of our lives.
yeah, and it's a lot healthier than alcohol in a lot of
There you
terms.
go.
I personally think anyway. But so I would have been doing that, and then I would have found myself, oh, I feel better the next day after I have cannabis. So I would have noticed myself feeling better even before I had a diagnosis.
Right.
And then it was more the case of, well, I'll try all the things that the doctors are giving me and see if that will help. Oh, because if the cannabis will help, maybe the proper drugs will help as well, was my thinking at the time. But going through that process, it's just a series of failures. And each drug they try is just like, oh no, here we go again kind of thing. But cannabis was the one thing I'd always go back to, especially if you're having severe nausea or stomach cramps or IBS, which are also symptoms of fibromyalgia.
Right.
You, like, if you haven't eaten in 3 weeks, which is one particular time when I was in a bad flare up, you need something to stop the nausea. And cannabis hasn't been known for that for cannabis or for cancer patients for years.
Of course.
So that's how I sort of, I would say, go more down that route, because I've tried alternative medicines, I've tried traditional Chinese medicines, acupuncture, various other things, and cannabis was the only thing that I could find that would work. And
Yeah.
even in the strengths and what's available to me, I can't afford as much as I would need to feel good. So
Right.
that's part of the other reason is it's also too expensive. So one of the only ways you can actually have enough to make yourself feel okay to do things during the day is to grow yourself as well. So that's kind of, as you said with was it the green tea she started growing over COVID. That's kind
Yeah.
of, I had put one or two seeds in the ground before in guerrilla grows and stuff, just testing it out, but during COVID is when I got serious about it, let's say.
Yeah,
And it's
because
just,
it works.
yeah, yeah, and it's
And the right to grow is one of the tenets of my Irish Canna Clinic. This is something that I feel so strongly about. I keep telling people outside me here, I have 5 plants on the roof, legal. I'm 2 hours from Dublin. I mean, look at nobody, and there's over 200 clubs. There's 1,000 clubs in Spain, the social cannabis social clubs. You know, nobody, the streets are not, I don't know if you've been to Barcelona lately, but it kind
that's a
of
lovely
functions
place, yeah.
well.
Yeah. No, Barcelona's a lovely place, yeah, yeah.
And it's not teeming with the psychotic teens and like the narratives that constantly get spun out here. But the thing is, a right to grow is a human right, I believe. And so,
Totally, yeah.
and how's that working out for you? I mean, have you discovered a strain that works for you particularly well, or like I have
I find more indica strains, but I'm still looking through various different strains because there really isn't enough information out there on certain strains for certain illnesses. So I find it's pretty much trial and error by yourself, or else you can go and look on Strain Finder or various things like this. But even if you're buying a certain strain from a certain breeder, that doesn't guarantee you that will have the certain chemicals you're looking for as well. So it is a bit of a trial and error, but currently I think the one I'm growing at the moment was going to be trialed by an Israeli company. Well, they're trying to get the rights to grow it. So hopefully this will be a good strain, and that's a Kush Mass.
Right.
So hopefully It's not ready yet, but once it's ready, I can attest to its benefits, let's say.
There you go. But that's what it is. It's trial and error, and
Yeah.
that's what I did here. Because of the cannabis clubs, it meant that I'm able to go out. I'm able to buy buy a gram of that, a gram of that, a gram of that, a gram of that. I did
Yeah.
that for maybe 2 years until I go bang. I like these blue strains. I like these these couple of strains. Not a lot of them. The 5 plants I have out there are all different strains of the one family of plants, which is they're kind of blue. Your blueberry, different classifications of blueberry. I'm able to. I go to Cannabis. I can buy whatever seed I want. You know what I mean? So, but this is the freedom of. This is what prohibition denies people in Ireland, and so it's why I'm so animated about this whole argument, because I'm here and I'm able to do all the things that I'm able to do, but the likes of patients like yourself are denied these basic human rights, and it's there for you're getting your medicine paid for.
Recently, there's a CBD coffee shop has opened up in Dublin, and they provide CBD bud.
Right.
And having the experience of walking in and being able to purchase bud so easily almost made me annoyed. It's like, this is how it should be for years. And it is only CBD bud, so THC is the chemical that helps with neuropathic pain and stops the transfer of pain to the receptors.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's that easy to get it was just, it's like, why can't this be this easy? And it's
not that easy, because if that's some people like Little Collins and all these people, they're going through court cases. I think Little Collins is up next week, literally. And JP, I'm supposed to be I'm going to be talking with JP on here on these talks very, very, very soon. And yes, so I mean, this is how absurd it is. And what's wrong here? We have a citizens' assembly now. Do you hold that much hope? Have you watched any of that?
Yeah, I was watching it. I don't, to be honest. No, after hearing, there's one particular doctor who was talking about fentanyl lace joints and various things like this, and I was like, oh Jesus, this isn't going to go well. But it's just, there is very little common sense, and it seems that people must have a vested interest. I know that they may see it as, oh, we have to save the children, we have to think of the children, but there is enough people out there who are finding various issues that aren't being treated, and my personal opinion is they're kind of going against their Hippocratic oath, because there is something that's available, but they're not willing to do it because of their perceptions of things. And
they don't learn what the endocannabinoid system is in school. This is another serious flaw in medical schools and the medical industry. And as we spoke off the air there, that our medical industry in Ireland looks completely west. It looks to the FDA. All those drugs that are generated in America and are so commercialized within those group of pharma companies, they are in Ireland. They're providing 80,000 direct jobs. Beyond those 80,000 is another 100,000, 150,000, subsidiary jobs. So it's like our politicians are never going to, if they're lobbying, there's massive money. Those pharma are lobbying our few helpless, politicians who just want to go home and fix a lane, Yeah,
well, my local politician used to be an accountant for a pharmaceutical company. So I know exactly what the feeling is, and I've had a couple of chats with him, and his general opinion is, oh, that's just for scumbags, and he brushes it off.
Wow.
So yeah, I've had that experience with local politicians. Yeah, very much so.
That's the stigmatization. That's the one,
Yeah.
As well, on top of people not recognizing medical benefits, ignoring medical benefits, and even though the world is, everybody's on the wrong side of history here, perhaps has to be. So, so what's, you're waiting for your next harvest, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm the same here now. I'm looking outside. They're very, very healthy, but it won't be. I'll have my harvest for the winter. It sees me right through the winter. My one terrace, my little group of plants out there.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I'd love to have that ability, like, because when I was straight out of school, I went and studied horticulture. So I would know a little bit about growing plants and stuff like that in the past. And it's such an easy plant when you don't over baby it. It's like it could be grown anywhere. Like
that's why they call it weed.
Exactly. But it's so annoying just to not be able to, when you could grow a field of it and feed half a village kind of thing, or service half a village if you want to put it that way. But it's and even in the hemp sphere of things, if you're trying to grow CBD or that sort of side of it, or even grow hemp for building purposes, the licensing of all of it is crazy. And do you know who the largest producer of hemp in Ireland is? It's Borden Amona.
There you go.
It's the government themselves. Yeah, so it's kind of silly, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awful lot of duplicitous stuff happening, particularly within Ireland. I had Chris Allen from the Hemp Federation on here a couple of weeks ago, and she played it like it is, and she said that the hemp industry in Ireland has been so strangled so badly, and they've got nobody really. They've got Chris Allen, and she's the director of the Hemp Federation. They've got her fighting for her, but they don't really have the kind of the rest of the Ireland's politics. Even in we're in the age of climate change, and I'm here in Spain. Climate change is dramatic. I don't know if you've seen what's going on in Italy the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's nuts. This is happening here in Spain. We got rain, a little bit of kick off that thing that's happening in Italy. But we were in drought before this, and if we're in drought, that's all your tomatoes, that's all your fruits, all your stuff that goes back to Ireland, and it's that serious. And
that's one of the big parts where people don't realize is like the south of Spain has a lot of issues with tapping wells, and that's part of the reason it's causing desertification and stuff like that. So it's that food sources aren't going to last forever, and they mightn't even last for the next 5 or 10 years. So if we don't start producing certain things ourselves, either in glass houses or indoors, not only cannabis but also tomatoes and various other things, we're going to be in big trouble, I think, in the next 10 years. But
that's one of the features of hemp, because it's such a high protein. The seeds and the oils that comes from the hemp. Hemp is the cannabis plant. It's Cannabis SL, which is the plant, and so it's just. I mean, it is somehow a plant that can give us so much, and so we'll be preaching to the to both of us are converted. I think
so. Yeah. But hopefully this podcast and others like it can help convert others, if you put it that way, because there is definitely a big movement of people trying to push it forward a lot more. So there's a great podcast called High on Homegrown. I'm not sure if you know it, but they do great stuff on the world news, and they have 4 different people from across the world all saying their different pieces of how things are going in their country. So that's like different resources like that are becoming more mainstream.
Knowledge is out there.
Yeah. Once the knowledge is out there, you can't put it back in the box as well. Yeah. So
and we've got stuff happening. I literally just came off a webinar on German legalization, which is not going as hoped. A bit disappointing. It was a deep dive into the German legalization at the moment, and while it's very restrictive. Even that, but I mean, the Germans are so they want to have it so correct in terms of, but they still have right to grow. They still have these certain rights. It's not about profit. It's removing the gangsters. That's what the cannabis social clubs do. They remove the gangsters, and then but they give people safe access as a result, and they give people the right to grow. So to me, the solution is materializing as we move.
One of the best ways I've seen recently for the legalization is Minnesota, who only, I think it was in the last 2 weeks, have legalized it for recreational use as well as medical. But they'll be doing a system where if you have been charged with possession of cannabis or growing cannabis before, you will be first in line to get a license. So it's more putting back the harms that have been caused by the war on drugs and helping those people who have been hurt the most by it. And I think that's one of the areas that we could really benefit in this country, because as a whole, it's mostly people in disadvantaged communities in Ireland who are criminalized for the use of cannabis. It's not people in Dublin 4 or G4 or any of those places who are getting charges because they pay their small fee to the judge's charity box and they're let off. Whereas it's the people who don't have those services are the most disadvantaged because they're from the poorest regions or the poorest areas in Ireland. So I think if we could focus on trying to get those people back into employment, because maybe they haven't been able to get employment because they have a charge of possession or various things like that on them. Guaranteed. Or even trying to travel to America or Australia, that's never going to happen for them again. You know, so there's
talented
various
people.
Things we could do. Go ahead.
Talented people, you know,
yes.
It's like yourself, and it's like the likes of green tea. I mean, this would be a brilliant horticulturist. I mean, she has no conviction, I don't believe, but she's still that's because she's being bloody careful, just like yourself. We can't. Yeah. That's why we can't talk openly. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is like Sinn Féin from the I'm old enough to know Sinn Féin's Sinn Féin with the actors' voices throughout the night.
I couldn't afford an actor today, but
so look, man, and anything else you'd like to add to? Have you anything?
I suppose maybe on the German legalization, they were thinking of bringing in an upper limit on the THC. I think they were trying to bring 10%. In 10%, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which for people with chronic neurological conditions, sometimes that higher level of THC is required, or even extracts, cannabis oils, various things like that. It's the full spectrum of ways of administering it that we need to look at. So whether it's suppositories for people with IBS or urinary tract issues, whether it's vaping, whether it's edibles, it's kind of the full spectrum that needs to be looked at, rather than just, oh, here's some bud. We need to, like, how much innovation could be made in Ireland through making actual products that are for pharmaceutical use, such as suppositories or various other things, because we already have a lot of the process and a lot of the
infrastructure
in Ireland. We could be world leading in this within 5 years, like no problem.
Yeah, fast track.
Yeah.
Because Germany it's disappointing. It's like I said, I just came off that webinar. That webinar was they have 2 strands. They're only talking flower, and they're only talking, like you said, and they're only talking like, I think 16 to, I think the top end is 21, but it's 16 to 21. But isn't the social club that they're talking? You can have social clubs up to 500 people. Look at, man, we won't talk about this now because it's a work in progress. And that's the point, is that even the Germans are kind of struggling with this. And I honestly believe that we can find an Irish solution, like you're saying. And I mean, we have GW. Is it GW has produced the 2 drugs, Sativix and Epidiolex, and we don't have people prepared to prescribe them, which I think is incredible. In the health committee this year, we had a doctor, an epilepsy doctor, who said he wouldn't prescribe Epidiolex. And you kind of go,
that's crazy. Yeah.
What can you do when you actually produce a drug at the end of all the trials and all that, R&D and all that, and still you hit a wall with a medical doctor that says, "Oh, I want to prescribe it," and the jury is so out on our jury's so in or out.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? The studies are now 25 years old on epilepsy. It's the same conditions as the spasticity that's caused by MS is the same kind of spasticity that you're talking about with fibromyalgia and Parkinson's disease. All of these neurological conditions that have this, cannabis is becoming it should be the go-to drug, and instead of being this drug of last resort. And it's, but
it should be seen as the drug of least risk, because there's so much extra risk and extra side effects from other pharmaceuticals that they're giving out to people with little or no foresight in a lot of cases. They're just like, oh, here, take this. Oh, that didn't work. Here's the next one. But how many of those symptoms could be treated by cannabis, where there's how many millions of people have been using it for how long, and there's been little to no side effects for most people. That's not talked about people with psychological issues that can't have interactions, but yeah, it's just, it's frustrating is the easiest word to use. Very frustrating in a lot of cases.
I think there's a community of people out there that is experiencing this, but the thing is that you have people that are suffering for it, and we shouldn't have people suffering for it. And fibromyalgia, like, I have friends, and they would have been through, or like you said, you have a process of drugs that you have to go through before you can ever hit this kind of, maybe before you can be able to, in a position to apply for the MCAP. What about the MCAP? Have you had any?
I have talked to my consultant about it, and he has kind of been of the mentality is like, oh, I'm not sure if I'd want to put my name to that, or would that cause me issues with my insurance, or will I lose my license with the medical board? So it's more of a state of fear by doctors as well, because they can know themselves, they can know the research, they can look into it themselves. They could have a joint after they go home at night, but to actually say that to a patient is a whole different level, and they can't do that until they have medical board approval. So it's kind of,
that's a barrier.
Yeah, that's a big barrier. And I think in Ireland there's a lot of people with their head in the sand, and it's very difficult to talk to people like that. So it's kind of, oh, you don't have the same education as me, so I'll dismiss your thoughts. There's a lot of that kind of, how would you put it?
Condescending kind of
condescending nature, yeah. So it's difficult.
Everybody that I've had on here talking about everybody patient that's been treating themselves with cannabis, I mean, they're so intelligent, and they're kind of very clear about what they're doing. They're very clear about, and it's almost like, who's fooling who? And we're in this situation where we're constantly arguing the same things again and again and again, and then the psychiatrist of Ireland or something comes out with a nonsense about a tiny percentage of people within a country, while you have a huge percentage of people either enjoying drugs without problems or suffering from a variety of conditions. And that's what this channel is trying to highlight, is that there is so many conditions, and we're having to find our own way and take chances, and like yourself there, hide.
Yeah, and even on the psychology side of things, there are certain cannabinoids that have been shown to help people with psychological issues, like the CBN and the smaller known chemicals. So it's CBN
is great for sleep. I have a little CBN vape, and that would be one of my travel vapes. That's nice. Because every now and again I'd like to regulate my sleep, and so I'll have a little. Do I have it here? But I have it anyway, or have it beside the bed, because that's the only place I use it. So every now and again I'd like to regulate my sleep, so I'll have a bang of CBN, and that's the one for sleeping.
And that's things that aren't available to people in a legal market, because if you're looking for a specific thing, it's like, oh no, we just have this generic stuff, and a lot of the breeders they're only breeding to try and increase the levels of THC, but maybe that's not the chemical that people are looking for.
Yes,
who are going for medical uses. So yeah, it's crazy, but I
That's where
see a lot of things
education, that's
changing.
where the education is there, and the clubs can provide that education because you're amongst your peers and you're sharing that information. Going, well, what works for you? What did you do? Do you want to try this one? It's good. Try it. Take it like this. There's so much information that is best, best shared by peers, and ultimately. There will be tests and there will be trials and there will be all these things, but we're feeding into that. The patients, and that's who should be feeding in.
Yeah, and it's I think it's the level that it has to have a real change is in colleges that are actually allowing people to study things, because there's huge difficulty with anyone trying to study anything to do with cannabis in Ireland.
Huge.
And there's like even I'd say if a couple of politicians were maybe booted out and we had some pro-cannabis politicians, that would definitely help. Even one or two, just to get the name out there, would definitely help as well, I'd say. But I think in the next election, there might be a bit of a shake-up. Let's hope.
Medical student and they're out there in UCD, and they've actually, this is the first time I've ever heard of anybody being able to conduct a study within an Irish college where they're studying psilocybin effects on PTSD. And I will be talking very soon with Alan from Northern Ireland, NI Canna guy. And this is a fact. PTSD on this island of Ireland is, I know people from the Troubles. I lived through the Troubles. I'm 51 on tomorrow. And so it's like I've been through every day the news on UTV. Somebody was killed, somebody's bombed. I have friends that I lived in pre-peace process Northern Ireland, and when RUC men had targets on their back, and it was a completely different world. And so it's like there's tons of PTSD out there on this island. So this is another issue, and thankfully, well, it's somehow you kind of go, well, hopefully that's the hopeful, the green shoots is they're allowing UCD students to study psilocybin and PTSD.
Well, that's brilliant, because
I'm going to try and wrap it. I've taken a lot of your time.
So no, go ahead. Yeah, you're right. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
and it was a wonderful experience.
Bob West from the notorious West family. There's a few dodgy Wests out there, but
I'm not related to them, so it's okay.
Yeah, Bob is fairly generic, so nobody can be offended.
No, exactly.
Thank you very much, Bob, and we'll say good night. Let's leave it at that.